Number 15. Ethan Washburn. In a heartbreaking case of alleged abuse, a starving boy was found wandering the streets of Griffin, Georgia, barefoot and in search of food in May of 2023. A neighbor came to his aid and called the police. 3 suspects were arrested in connection with the case. Krista and Tyler Shindley are accused of intentionally depriving the victim of food and keeping him locked in a room. He managed to escape shortly before he was seen walking around outside. According to police, the Shindleys left the victim alone for prolonged periods without lights, food, clothing, interaction, or anything else he needed. Shortly after the couple's arrest, Spalding County District Attorney Marie Brode told reporters that she believed the outcome of the situation would have been much different if the boy hadn't escaped when he did. She credited the neighbor who dialed 911 with saving the victim's life. The Shindleys each face multiple charges, including attempted murder, cruelty, battery, false imprisonment, and more. They are being held without bond, pending the outcome of the case. 10 days after the pair were taken into custody, authorities charged the victim's stepbrother, 20-year-old Ethan Washburn of Franklin, Tennessee, with 2 felony counts of aggravated assault. According to an arrest warrant, Washburn frequently punched the victim in the body, head, and face. He also allegedly choked the victim using both hands. Several weeks before his arrest, Washburn answered the door for Fox 5 reporters who paid a visit to the Shindleys' home. He claimed that he had no connection with the case and that he was just house-sitting. Number 14. Casey Carrick. In December 2018, South Carolina Highway Patrol troopers responded to a call about a woman being run over by a car outside a business in Orangeburg County. The victim suffered extensive injuries but survived. Witnesses initially believed the incident was a standard hit and run, but it was later discovered that the driver of the car and the victim were stepsisters. According to the Orangeburg County Sheriff's Office, 35-year-old Casey Carrick was seen arguing with the victim and then mowing her down in what appeared to be a deliberate act of violence. In a statement, investigators revealed that surveillance footage from the scene appeared to corroborate the allegations that the crime was intentional. Carrick was charged with attempted murder and faced up to 30 years in prison if convicted. While the exact outcome of the case is unclear, records show that she's currently serving a 7-year prison sentence. She has continued to get in trouble behind bars and has lost her canteen privileges several times for being caught with drugs. Number 3. Brittany Humphrey. Mother of 3, Kimberly Harville, was found dead from an upper body gunshot wound near a dead-end road in Gorman, California, in August 2016. Her children had been kidnapped and were found unsupervised at a motel in New Mexico 10 days later. Investigators quickly traced the crime to 22-year-old Brittany Sue Humphrey, who was identified as the victim's stepsister in some reports, but was actually her half-sister. Humphrey and her boyfriend, 28-year-old Joshua Robertson, were apprehended in Colorado the day after the kids were found. They were charged with abducting the children and with Harville's murder, along with an enhancement for lying in wait, which would have made them eligible for the death penalty if convicted. According to prosecutors, Harville had witnessed Robertson shooting a woman during an argument at a motel over some unreturned property. Harville panicked and said that she wanted to turn herself in to law enforcement, causing Robertson to fear that she was actually going to do it. Humphrey later testified that Robertson took a drive with Harville and returned alone. He said that he had blasted the victim for being a snitch. A third suspect, Alex Richard Valdez, was also charged in connection with Harville's murder for providing the gun that Robertson used to commit the crime. Valdez later admitted that he loaned Robertson the weapon knowing that he planned to kill Harville with it because he kept crying about how he didn't want to go to prison. According to Valdez's testimony, Robertson claimed that Humphrey was in on the plan, but she denied this in court. Robertson pleaded no contest to 1 count of first-degree murder, 3 counts of kidnapping, several weapon-related charges, and 2 counts of arson stemming from a separate incident. He was also found guilty of the lying in wait enhancement and received a life sentence. Valdez was also convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Humphrey pleaded no contest to the kidnapping charge and was sentenced to 13 years in prison. The murder charge against her was dropped, and the extent of her role in the crime, if any, remains unclear. Number 12. Samuel Hippolyte. In what police described as a feud over money that spiraled out of control, 40-year-old Billy Hippolyte was fatally gunned down in Brooklyn's Canarsie neighborhood in early 2023. The shooter fired 3 bullets into his torso in broad daylight and fled the scene in an SUV, leaving Billy to die on the sidewalk. At first, investigators offered few details regarding the circumstances of the crime. No arrests were initially made. During a vigil in Billy's memory, the victim's devastated sisters called for their brother's killer to be brought to justice. More than 2 months after Billy's murder, police arrested 26-year-old Samuel Hippolyte in connection with the case. Initial news reports described Samuel as Billy's stepbrother, while other articles identified the victim and suspect as half-brothers. The suspect was apprehended by U.S. Marshals after spending several weeks on the run. Samuel is accused of killing Billy during a dispute over money, but the circumstances surrounding the disagreement have not been revealed. Ruth Hippolyte, the victim's sister, told the New York Daily News that her brothers had their problems like any brothers with different parents, but the family never expected their differences to end in deadly violence. She said she felt happy and relieved that an arrest had finally been made, but she was also devastated by what she described as the loss of 2 brothers, one to a senseless murder, while another is behind bars. Number 11. Leandro Acosta and Karen Klein. Argentine step-siblings Leandro Acosta and Karen Klein became secret lovers during their teens. Throughout the 6-year relationship, the pair became increasingly resentful toward Karen's father, Ricardo Klein, and Leandro's mother, Miriam Kowalczuk, for allegedly abusing their younger siblings. In 2015, Leandro fatally shot his stepfather in the head at the family's home in the city of Pilar. When his mother walked in on him desecrating Ricardo's body, he pumped 3 bullets into her. The 25-year-old then cooked and ate some of Ricardo's flesh. For the next 11 days, Leandro kept the victim's remains hidden in the house. He beat his parents' corpses, crushed their skulls, drove a stake through his mother's body, and did other horrific things to the remains before taking them outside and burning them in a pyre. The carnage was discovered after a concerned relative called the police. Officers found part of Ricardo's pelvic bone and spine in a bucket, along with human flesh that appeared like it had been prepared for consumption. Portions of the victims' bodies were never found. It was later discovered that Leandro had cut the bodies up and fed some of the remains to the family's 6 dogs, while discarding other parts at a local dump. There were 16 garbage bags at the scene, some of which contained dismembered human remains, as well as a machete, a shotgun, a 9mm pistol, and 3 recently purchased axes. Police also found $10,000 in cash that they suspected Leandro of stealing from the victims. Police knew that Leandro didn't completely act alone, even if he was the main perpetrator of the gruesome double homicide. Confined to a wheelchair due to a years-long intestinal disorder, he was not strong enough to move the bodies on his own. Investigators naturally turned their suspicions toward Karen Klein as her stepbrother's co-conspirator. Karen insisted that she was asleep when the murders took place. She claimed that she only helped Leandro clean up, and she would later argue in court that he had threatened to kill her if she didn't do as she was told. During police questioning, Leandro readily admitted that he felt no remorse for killing the victims and that he had planned the murders ahead of time. He accused his deceased stepfather of harassing him for not having a job and failing to contribute to the household financially, even though his disabilities prevented him from being able to do so. Ricardo's brothers, on the other hand, claimed that there was a long-standing resentment between the two and that the violent tragedy was a long time coming. During Leandro's trial, prosecutors accused the defendant of being motivated by both his hatred for his parents and his desire to inherit their property and money. Evidence showed that both Karen and Leandro carried on with their lives as if nothing had happened after the gruesome slayings, but in the initial aftermath of the crime, there wasn't enough evidence to argue a strong case against Katie for murder. The charge was dropped, and she was released from jail, but the case was eventually reinstated and brought to trial. Both Karen and Leandro were found guilty of murder, which can carry a sentence of life imprisonment. Number 10. Brett Andres. Tensions between stepbrothers and roommates Kip Brian Boker and Brett Michael Andres reached a boiling point in 2019 during an argument at their apartment in Flint, Michigan. Andres, who was 34 years old at the time, bludgeoned 29-year-old Boker to death with a hammer, delivering 4 blows to the victim's head. He then dialed 911. An autopsy confirmed that Boker was killed by blunt force trauma, and Andres was charged with first-degree murder. According to witnesses, Andres had become increasingly irritated with Boker for some time leading up to the incident. While the exact reasons for the stepbrothers' strained relationship are unclear, the situation clearly reached a point where Andres could no longer control his anger. During his trial, the defendant's lawyer questioned his client's ability to move forward with the court proceedings due to his mental health. A psychiatric evaluation found Andres competent to stand trial, despite the attorney's belief that the man suffered from extreme paranoia that caused him to become irrationally suspicious of Boker. A jury convicted Andres as charged, which carries an automatic life sentence without parole in Michigan. In a victim impact statement, Boker's father said that he felt that people who take a life should lose theirs, and he was disappointed that it wasn't an option in this case because Michigan does not have the death penalty. Number 9. Joshua Mackin. Things got ugly between Joshua Mackin and his stepbrother Sam Westlake when they both became involved with the same woman in early 2018. According to court documents, Mackin was outraged when he found out that Westlake was hooking up with his girlfriend. A war of words ensued between the stepbrothers, who lived in Allen County, Indiana, and at some point Westlake began to fear that Mackin would make good on the death threats he was making on social media. Despite their bitter rivalry and Westlake's safety concerns, the two men hung out one afternoon. They were joined by a friend, Ryan Masoner, and the trio worked on a truck with plans to proceed to a local motel. Once they got the truck running, Mackin pulled the gun and opened fire on Westlake, who was sitting in his Jeep. Westlake died from his injuries, and Mackin and Masoner fled the scene. Masoner discarded the murder weapon in a nearby river. He later told police that Mackin had warned him not to talk to law enforcement, threatening to harm Masoner and his family if he dared to rat him out. After the murder, Mackin went to the home of the woman at the center of the deadly love triangle. Investigators soon caught up with him and charged him with murder, 2 gun-related counts, and being a habitual offender. Mackin maintained his innocence throughout the case, but the jury convicted him on all counts. He was sentenced to 117 years in prison. Number 8. Andres Adolfo Surratt. While responding to a call about a family dispute at a home in Garden Grove, California in 2015, police found 20-year-old Dante Barcalo clinging to life with stab wounds to his chest and side. The young man was rushed to a nearby hospital when he died from his injuries while undergoing emergency surgery. Barcalo's mother told law enforcement that her son was attacked with a kitchen knife by his stepbrother, 25-year-old Andres Adolfo Surratt, during a verbal argument that escalated into physical violence. The suspect dropped the knife and fled from the scene before police arrived, and was captured in an alleyway a short while later. Authorities charged Surratt with first-degree murder, but his extensive history of mental illness raised doubt about whether the crime was premeditated or if the defendant meant to kill the victim. Surratt was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia multiple times, and 3 court-appointed experts all concluded that he was insane when he stabbed his stepbrother. The judge ruled during a bench trial that Surratt was not guilty by reason of insanity. While announcing the decision, he said that he still believed the killing might have constituted a first-degree murder, but the evidence wasn't compelling enough for him to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt. Surratt was ordered to the custody of a mental hospital where he'll remain until he's deemed to no longer be dangerous to himself or others. Number 7. Wiley McKenzie. When an elderly Florida man overheard commotion coming from one of the bedrooms at his home in Largo, Florida in February of 2020, he rushed toward the noise to find out what was happening. According to police, the man's wife and stepdaughter were being attacked by his 49-year-old machete-wielding son, Wiley McKenzie. Unable to stop the attack, McKenzie's father fled from the home and dialed 911. Both victims died from their injuries. McKenzie and the victims were reportedly fighting over money when their situation turned violent. He's accused of first attacking his mother and then going after his sister when she tried to flee the room. An elderly neighbor who's lived next door to the family for years was shocked to learn of the tragedy. Daniel Kramer told News Channel 8 that he didn't overhear anything unusual coming from the house. He described Mackenzie as quiet and said he felt sad that people died and a family was torn apart. Authorities charged Mackenzie with 2 counts of first-degree murder. At the end of his first court appearance, the judge overseeing the case told the defendant's lawyer that he may want to have Mackenzie's mental health examined. Shortly after Mackenzie's arrest, ABC Action News revealed that his arrest record mentioned signs of mental health issues. After the attacks, the defendant allegedly told his father that he set him free by committing the act. Mackenzie was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and remains behind bars without bail at the Pinellas County Jail while awaiting trial. Number 6. Kevin Ash. A family dispute at a home in Laclede County, Missouri, erupted into deadly violence in September 2022 when a verbal argument escalated into gunfire. According to court documents, 33-year-old Kevin Ash was entangled in a disagreement with his father at his home in Lebanon when his stepbrother, 26-year-old Bobby Langston, intervened in an attempt to de-escalate the fight. Langston was fatally shot amid his efforts to break up the fight. Police dispatchers received a 911 call from Ash, who claimed that Langston had lunged at him, implying that he shot his stepbrother in self-defense. Ash's father told a much different story, claiming that Ash had already drawn the gun before either of the victims had entered the room. In a recording of the argument that was captured on Ash's phone, the suspect could allegedly be heard threatening to shoot his father, in his words, "just like I did your son." Furthermore, investigators say that the location of Langston's body was inconsistent with Ash's version of events. He faces felony charges for murder and armed criminal action, and the case is slated to go to trial in September 2023. Number 5. Nathan Matthews. In 2015, a high schooler named Becky Watts mysteriously vanished from her home in Bristol, England. Her stepbrother Nathan Matthews and his girlfriend Shauna Hoare were at the home when Becky disappeared, but they both claimed to know nothing of her whereabouts. The couple told police that they heard the front door slam, leading them to believe that Shauna had left the house on her own accord, and that for some reason she never made it home. But Nathan and Shauna's stories didn't add up, and evidence against them began to stack up in the weeks following Becky's disappearance. A bloody fingerprint on Becky's door belonged to Nathan, and surveillance footage from a local store showed him buying a circular saw shortly after his stepsister went missing. Around the same time, both Nathan and Shauna were seen buying cleaning supplies. Nearly 2 weeks after Becky vanished, her dismembered remains were found inside a shed belonging to a couple that Nathan and Shauna were friends with. Carl Demetrius and Jadine Parsons admitted that the pair had offered them money to store a suitcase containing Becky's saran-wrapped body parts, but they insisted they were unaware of what was inside the luggage. During questioning, Nathan eventually admitted to killing Becky. He insisted Shauna wasn't involved, but they were both charged with murder. According to prosecutors, the couple played Monopoly and ordered takeout shortly after they killed Becky. They kept the young woman's corpse in their home for 3 days before passing it off to their friends. Nathan and Shauna carried on with their lives as if nothing had happened, while Becky's loved ones frantically searched for her. After admitting to the teen's murder, Nathan claimed that he didn't tell his family that Becky was dead because he didn't want to take away their hope. He was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 33 years. Shauna was convicted of the lesser charge of manslaughter and received a 17-year prison sentence. Carl Demetrius was sentenced to 2 years in prison for assisting an offender, and Jadine Parsons was jailed for 16 months on the same charge. Number 4. Savon Schmus. 18-year-old McKenna Hilton was found strangled to death along a trail in Grand Rapids, Michigan in August 2016. Investigators accused her half-brother, Savon Schmus, of murdering her at their apartment less than a mile away. His motive for killing McKenna was never revealed, but he was found competent to stand trial after undergoing a mental health evaluation. In 2017, Schmus pleaded guilty to 1 count of first-degree premeditated murder in exchange for a sentence of 40 to 100 years. Due to sentencing laws revolving around his age at the time of his crime, however, there's a chance that he'll do 60 years at the most. McKenna's aunt told M Live that she was disappointed by the system, which seems to prioritize the rights of criminals over justice for victims. But she also conceded that no amount of prison time would alleviate the family's heartbreak over McKenna's death. Shortly after the conclusion of the case, the father of both McKenna and Schmuss found himself in hot water with the law. 51-year-old David Schmuss was charged in connection with some highly disturbing illegal content on his phone. The material was discovered after Schmuss left his phone in someone's car, and the device was handed over to his 30-year-old daughter, who reported her father to the police. He was sentenced to 1.5 to 6 years in prison. Number 3. Philip Manchus. In August of 2019, 21-year-old Philip Manchus entered the Al-Noor Mosque in Bærum, Norway, and opened fire on the people inside. He fired multiple shots before being taken down by a 65-year-old worshipper, who fought him to the ground and held him in a chokehold until police arrived. Thankfully, nobody was seriously hurt during the senseless crime. A few hours later, the young man's stepsister, Johan Janja Ila Hansen, was found dead in the family's home with gunshot wounds to the head. Johan was adopted from China, and Manchus would later admit in court that he disliked her because she was not ethnically Norwegian. Authorities condemned the mosque shooting as an act of far-right racist terrorism. When questioned by the police, Manchus said that his goal was to intimidate Muslims, and at the end of his first court appearance, he gave a Nazi salute. He did the same thing at the end of his second court appearance as he stood in front of media photographers. Manchus denied murdering his sister or being a terrorist, despite his openly hateful views and his admitted goal of targeting victims based on their race and religion. The investigation revealed that the suspect had become fascinated with Nazism in the weeks leading up to his crimes. He tried joining a white supremacist group called the Nordic Resistance Movement, but never made it past the interview stage due to an internal split in the organization. When Manchus' stepmom noticed that he was clipping news articles about neo-Nazi shootings and hanging them on his wall, where he hid them behind a Norwegian flag, she considered reporting her stepson to the authorities. According to investigators, Manchus had a fascination with the Christchurch mosque shootings that had happened in New Zealand just months earlier. To prevent his stepmom from going to the police, Manchus took the articles down and acted like he was no longer aligned with far-right views. But his stepmother remained suspicious, and she decided that she was going to report Manchus anyway. The mosque shooting and Johanna's murder happened that very day, before the suspect's stepmom had a chance to file the report. In the aftermath of the senseless tragedy, the country's National Police Service urged community members who suspect someone of harboring hateful views to file a report, even if they're not sure if someone is dangerous. Manchus was convicted of both crimes and sentenced to 21 years in prison. Number 2. Broderick L. Carter. While responding to a report of multiple shots fired at a residence in El Dorado, Arkansas in November 2022, police found 30-year-old Jontavian Hill dead from multiple gunshot wounds. He had been shot 9 times in the back and once in the back of the head in the living room of the home. Investigators traced the crime to Hill's stepbrother, 36-year-old Broderick L. Carter, who was taken into custody in Oklahoma City following an 8-hour standoff with police. He faces multiple charges, including capital murder, aggravated residential burglary, and possession of a firearm, along with enhancements for engaging in violent criminal group activity and committing a felony with a firearm. A second suspect, 30-year-old Charles Trey Mitchell, was also initially charged in connection with the case. He was accused of traveling with Carter to Arkansas, but was released without charges after proving that he was in Oklahoma at the time of Hill's murder. Shortly after Mitchell was cleared as a suspect, police arrested 27-year-old Tyree T. Threats as Carter's suspected co-conspirator. In what appears to be an unfortunate case of mistaken identity, Tyree's name is pronounced Trey, and Mitchell goes by the nickname Trey, and both men have the name tattooed on their chest, which further contributed to the mix-up. According to the most recent updates on the case, Carter and Threats are being held without bond while they await trial. Number 1. Edward Smith. Just days before Thanksgiving in 2022, 36-year-old Shantari Riley was shot dead in broad daylight on a sidewalk in Madison, Wisconsin. He died from his injuries despite emergency responders' attempts to save him. Investigators found 3 cell phones at the crime scene, including one that allegedly belonged to the victim's stepbrother, 40-year-old Edward Smith. A witness who was working at a construction site nearby told police that he saw Riley and Smith fighting shortly before the shooting. According to the bystanders' version of events, Riley stood over Smith and punched him in the face, then pulled him to his feet and tried helping him into an SUV. The witness claimed that he turned back to focus on his work and overheard multiple gunshots. He looked back at the scene and saw Smith walking away from the scene with a gun in his hand. 3 more shots were fired, and the onlooker ran off down the street to warn people about what had happened. When the person returned to the scene, the SUV was gone and Riley had been left for dead. During a search of Smith's vehicle, police reportedly found 3 fired shell casings matching the bullets at the murder scene. Police arrested Smith on unrelated felony warrants stemming from multiple other cases and later charged him with first-degree intentional homicide. He faces a total of 23 felony counts and 3 misdemeanors stemming from 6 separate cases, including cocaine possession, fleeing police in a vehicle, being a convicted felon in possession of a firearm, and 4 counts of bail jumping. All but one of the charges came over a 13-month period. The mother of Smith's child, Sierra Dorsey, is facing a criminal charge for allegedly harboring a felon. She was reportedly caught driving Smith around after he told her that he had killed Riley. The cases are ongoing.
8. Rochelle Ray Zeller. In a distressing incident on a late November night in 2021, a youth football game in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania took a dark turn when one parent's behavior turned violent. Rochelle Ray Zeller, a 37-year-old woman, was taken into custody under allegations of physically assaulting another woman, stomping on her, and even hitting a man with her vehicle on the football field. The shocking events unfolded at Joe LaRock Football Field on Kaylors Road during an all-star football game, attended by about 100 people. Responding to reports of a large fight breaking out, Sugarloaf Township Police arrived at a chaotic scene, but with no ongoing physical altercations taking place. But several witnesses reported that one woman, identified as Rochelle, dressed in a black coat and grey pants, attacked another innocent woman. The victim was punched in the face, causing her to fall to the ground, and afterwards she had her head stomped on. The same woman, still donning the black coat and grey pants, then proceeded to drive her Mercedes-Benz onto the field and hit a man before quickly leaving the crime scene. When Wilkes-Barre police spotted the vehicle parked behind a home on Mayock Street, they identified Rochelle Ray Zeller as the driver and attacker. Zeller reportedly told the police that she was at her son's football game that night, but declined to go into any further detail. When Sugarloaf Township Police arrived at her property, Zeller was found wearing the same outfit, with bloodstains on both her clothes and right hand. The front of her car displayed scuff marks consistent with the incident, and mud covered the front tires and wheel wells. Football equipment was also scattered on the rear floor of the car. And despite being questioned by law enforcement, Zeller chose not to answer any hard questions. She faced arraignment on charges of aggravated assault, disorderly conduct, reckless endangerment, simple assault, and harassment. Zeller remained in custody at the Luzerne County Correctional Facility on a bail of $25,000. Then, in May 2023, she was finally sentenced to anywhere from 6 to 23 months in prison for her part in the violent fight. The incident ruined an innocent all-star youth football game that was hosted by the Valley Chiefs Youth Football Club. The club, distancing themselves from the violent incident, expressed cooperation with authorities and labeled the behavior as disrespectful actions and outlandish. They also clarified that none of their organization members were involved or hurt in the attack. Helping with the incident response were state police and officers from Butler Township, Conyngham, and Hazleton, underlining the community's wide efforts to address the unfortunate situation. 7. Sucker Punch. In a troubling incident that unfolded after a playoff baseball game at Liberty High School, a Kissimmee man's behavior has highlighted the growing concerns surrounding sportsmanship and respect at children's sporting events. Jorge Apon Gonzalez was arrested for punching an umpire, Reynaldo Mora, in the head after a baseball game that was held between Liberty High School and Harmony High School on April 18, 2023. Surveillance footage from that day captured the moment Apon Gonzalez approached Mora from behind and suddenly struck him on the head. Mora, who officiated the game, was surprised by the attack. He expressed his astonishment later on, stating, "All of a sudden, I felt something here in my temple. Knocked me down. I don't know." While Mora initially didn't recognize his attacker, he later learned that Apon Gonzalez was the one responsible. Mora believes the punch was connected to a warning he'd issued to Gonzalez's son during the game for unsportsmanlike behavior. He said it has to be. There was nothing else during the game. Sadly though, Mora's experience isn't exactly isolated. According to a survey conducted by the National Association of Sports Officials, almost 47% of surveyed officials out of 17,000 respondents reported feeling unsafe or afraid for their safety thanks to the behavior of rowdy spectators, coaches, players, or administrators. Additionally, about 60% noted a decline in sportsmanship in recent years. Despite the disheartening incident, Mora remains determined to continue officiating games. He maintains a positive approach, emphasizing the importance of having fun while officiating at these events. He believes that if the enjoyment ever diminishes for him, then it'll be time to step away from the role. Mora is a proponent of accountability, emphasizing the need for responsibility on all sides, whether it's the officials, players, spectators, or coaches. But the incident has since sparked discussion on how to ensure the safety and respect of all individuals involved in youth sporting events. Apon Gonzalez is now facing criminal charges for battery on a sports official and disruption of a school function, but the outcome of the case has not yet been determined. The incident serves as a reminder of the challenges officials face and the need to foster an environment of respect, sportsmanship, and proper conduct at impressionable children's sports events. 6. Hockey game brawl. A brawl broke out between the parents of opposing hockey teams at a children's tournament that took place in southern British Columbia in April 2016, with alcohol believed to have played a significant role in the conflict. Despite the idyllic portrayal of minor hockey, the reality of the situation revealed a darker side, including stories of extramarital affairs, fistfights, threats, and intoxicated parents engaging in inappropriate actions. The fight unfolded during a spring hockey tournament in Osoyoos, where spectators supporting teams of 10 and 11-year-olds fought in the arena stands. According to RCMP Constable Jason Bader, harsh insults were exchanged between the parents of both teams, eventually escalating into a physical altercation. Reports suggest that the parents had been drinking and causing disturbances at a nearby resort that night before heading to the arena, where the fight went down. One woman was inadvertently hit in the face by her husband while trying to stop him, although no charges were pressed. Both teams issued statements about the incident. One denied that his parents were drunk and claimed that the fight escalated after a man from the opposite team punched a woman twice, allegedly breaking her nose in the process and giving her a concussion. And the other team expressed a commitment to stopping such incidents in the future, emphasizing the importance of maintaining a safe environment for both players and spectators. The incident shed a bit of light on the less savory aspects of youth sports, exposing the underbelly of behavior that can take place among parents and coaches, despite the idealized image associated with minor hockey. In spite of the controversies and disturbances, the tournament was never sanctioned by BC Hockey, and this limited the extent to which disciplinary actions could be taken. 5. Mask controversy. In January 2021, a 10-year-old and his family member faced some unfortunate consequences in Lebanon, Ohio, when his mother, Jennifer Cheney, refused to wear her mask properly at her son's youth basketball game. The family's involvement in Kings Basketball Association, a part of the Cincinnati Premier Youth Basketball League, was disrupted by Jennifer's refusal to cover her nose up with her mask. During a game held between Kings Basketball Association and Sycamore, Jennifer Chaney live-streamed the event on Facebook for all of her family and friends who were unable to attend thanks to the COVID-19 restrictions. She wore her mask under her nose, which prompted a spectator from the opposing team to approach her about the face covering. Later, another man came up to her and asked about her mask, to which Jennifer cited a medical condition as her reason for wearing the mask that way. The situation quickly escalated, and the league's president Ben Goodyear stepped in, instructing her to leave the gym. This led to a heated exchange. The family was then told that they were getting expelled from the league. The Cheneys were emotionally affected by the incident, especially their young son Connor, who was in tears due to the confusion around the events. Despite the family's corroboration of Jennifer's medical condition, the league remained firm in their decision to expel them. The Cincinnati Premier Youth Basketball League's COVID-19 rules stated that face coverings were mandatory for spectators. And the league president clarified that they do not grant medical exemptions. The family gave evidence of Jennifer's medical condition, attested by a physician's note, but the league still maintained its decision. In contrast, Ohio's Department of Health guidelines acknowledge medical exemptions for face coverings. So, was the Basketball League justified in its response to this incident? Well, that depends on who you ask. 4. Melbourne versus West Melbourne. In October 2022, a disturbing scuffle erupted among parents at a 12 and under youth football game between teams from Melbourne and West Melbourne. The conflict, which was captured on video, unfolded on the sidelines and quickly escalated onto the actual field. Shockingly, children at the event were caught up in the middle of the chaos, with some pleading for their parents to stop fighting and others being urged to get away from the commotion. Amid all of the violence, reports came out that a young cheerleader was actually trampled by the battling parents, although the exact extent of her injuries is unclear. Despite the upsetting scene, there were no reports of law enforcement intervening or arrests being made. After the fight, the Atlantic Coast Youth Athletics Association, ACYAA, decided to take action. ACYAA presidents issued suspensions to all individuals involved in the altercation, barring them from future participation in any ACYAA activities, including practices, for the remainder of the 2022 season. These suspensions were in effect from October 17, 2021 to October 29, 2022. The ACYAA released a statement addressing the incident and reinforcing the importance of following the organization's strict code of conduct policy. The statement expressed concern about recent situations escalating on the field and spilling onto the sidelines, emphasizing that team sidelines should never dump onto the field since it contributes to tension and confusion for the kids. As of October 16, 2022, any future incidents of a similar nature would result in teams being suspended for the rest of the season, with the league being placed on probation for the 2023 season. The ACYAA also issued a verbal warning to all leagues about infractions related to the Code of Conduct and social media policy, emphasizing the need to prioritize a safe environment for children to play the sports they love. 3. Father tackles referee. In 2022, an enraged parent who tackled a soccer referee during his son's game in Roseville was sentenced to a year of probation and ordered to attend anger management courses. To this day, he remains prohibited from attending youth sporting events. 35-year-old Vincent Robles Jr., a Sacramento resident, was also told to maintain a distance of at least 360 feet from the victim for a year and give restitution for the referee's lost wages. He was handed a 30-day jail sentence, which can be served through alternative sentencing. The incident took place on October 30th, 2021, when Robles charged onto the field during an under-16 match, forcefully brought down the game's referee, and berated him. This confrontation was captured on video and garnered significant attention from the public. Robles subsequently pleaded no contest to battery on a sports official. Placer County District Attorney's Office emphasized that justice is served through multiple channels in the criminal legal process, aiming to hold individuals accountable while also offering necessary assistance. This case underscores the significance of maintaining basic decency, especially during youth sports events. After the attack, the coach of the team was suspended by the NorCal Premier Soccer Organization for not properly managing the spectators' behavior. Additionally, the team was barred from competing again until June 2022 as a consequence of the incident. 2. Motherly advice. A California woman, Ladera Shanti Hunt, has been ordered to write an apology letter and pay over $9,000 in restitution after she shouted from the stands for her daughter to punch an opponent during a basketball game, an incident that was shared widely on social media. In November 2021, during a youth basketball game at the MAP Sports facility in Garden Grove, Hunt's daughter had a confrontation with a rival player. Hunt yelled, "You better hit her for that," and seconds later, the rival player fell down to the floor. As a result, Hunt was charged with contributing to the delinquency of a minor and battery. The Orange County District Attorney's Office also revealed that a county superior court judge granted Hunt misdemeanor diversion on the strict condition that she fulfill a set of requirements over the next 2 years. These conditions included writing several apologies to the victim, her parents, and both basketball teams, as well as paying restitution and completing some anger management classes before being allowed to attend basketball games. She was also required to stay away from the victim in the future. The incident happened during a game between the SoCal Blaze and Dream Academy. In a viral video, a 14-year-old player from Dream Academy missed a three-point shot and fell down to the floor, followed by another player, Lauren Ham, who was later identified by her mother. After getting up, the Dream Academy player suddenly lunged toward Lauren and hit her in the head, leading to a concussion. Orange County District Attorney Todd Spitzer condemned Hunt's actions, emphasizing that youth sports should promote discipline, teamwork, and fair play, not violence. He described Hunt's actions as reprehensible, noting that telling her own daughter to engage in violence transformed her into someone willing to hurt another person. After the incident, the father of the Dream Academy player Corey Benjamin, a former first-round draft pick for the Chicago Bulls, expressed disappointment in his daughter's behavior, claiming that it didn't actually reflect the values of his family or the spirit of sportsmanship that basketball requires. He apologized for her actions and expressed his commitment to her improvement. 1. Catholic School Volleyball. A violent fight outside a Catholic school involving parents during an 8th grade girls' volleyball game ended in charges of assault against 2 adults. The incident happened on September 27, 2019, in the parking lot outside the St. Susanna School gymnasium. It transpired after one parent left the gym due to becoming upset over a call that was made during the game. The victim, 44-year-old Raymond Phipps, was then hit from behind and thrown down to the ground, prompting his wife to call 911. She described the assault to dispatchers, indicating that her husband had been jumped by the attackers in the parking lot. Gerald Gertz allegedly punched and kicked the victim in both the head and face, while Sarah Hadfield reportedly joined in by stomping on defenseless Phipps. Hadfield was arrested at the scene, while Gertz initially left before turning himself in later on in the Mason Police Department. In a phone call with authorities, Gertz argued about the situation and eventually decided to surrender himself. The victim's injuries were so severe that he couldn't speak or write, preventing him from giving a statement to the police. Fortunately, though, no children were harmed in the fight. The St. Susanna School took the incident very seriously, and both Gertz and Hadfield were suspended from the Youth Sports League and barred from stepping foot on St. Susanna grounds. The accused were then released on bond and were scheduled for arraignment shortly after. The church officers declined to comment on the incident. The next year, in November 2020, Gertz was sentenced to 2 to 3 years in prison for felonious assault. Hatfield, on the other hand, only received 2 days behind bars for her part in the fight.
Number 8. Robert Mazeshka Jr. 18-year-old Danielle Mazeshka and her boyfriend, 19-year-old Seren Bryan, were reported missing by Danielle's father in August 2018. The couple lived with him in Clinton Township, Michigan, and he hadn't seen or heard from them in several days. Then, later that same evening, another household member noticed a foul odor coming from a shed on the family's property. And inside the shed were several garbage bags containing Danielle and Seren's dismembered remains. By the time police named Danielle's brother, Robert Jr., as a suspect, he'd fled the state. Luckily, though, he was apprehended at a Greyhound bus station in Cincinnati, Ohio. Robert's attorney argued in court that his client suffered from mental illnesses, including bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. But experts concluded that Robert was sane when he killed Danielle and Seren, effectively barring him from arguing that he was not guilty by reason of insanity. In the end, he was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and was sentenced to 2 life terms without parole. A court upheld Robert's guilty verdict and sentence in 2021 after a failed attempt to overturn his conviction based on his mental illness. Number 7. Ross Paul Emick. In early 2020, a man went to the police in Mesa, Arizona and reported that his brother, 36-year-old Ross Paul Emick, was threatening his life. The victim already had a restraining order against Ross stemming from a dispute over inheritance money from their grandparents. And according to a probable cause statement, Ross felt that his brother didn't deserve to receive an inheritance. 4 months later, Ross's girlfriend warned police that he planned to do something. More specifically, she said that Ross was planning to wreak havoc on his brother's life until the victim repaid the inheritance money and dropped the order of protection. Police warned Ross to obey the restraining order and advised him to let go of his anger over the inheritance situation. But he allegedly violated the order just weeks later when he sent a threatening email to the victim emphasizing his willingness to go to prison. He also warned that the victim and his family's life and safety depended on him fulfilling Ross's demands. One of Ross's other brothers, Patrick, told Fox 10 Phoenix that Ross had been given up for adoption as a child. He came around as an adult and changed his name to Emick and allegedly forged documents to become a beneficiary of the will and deeded his grandparents' house to himself for just $10. According to the news outlet, documents showed that Ross spent copious amounts of money gambling after their grandfather's death and wrote checks to himself for tens of thousands of dollars. Ross Emick was charged with theft by extortion, stalking, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and computer tampering. But unfortunately, the outcome of the case is unclear. Number 6. Antonio Swanson. 26-year-old Wilnita Hill was shot dead in broad daylight on a Cleveland street in October 2019. She and her boyfriend had just rolled up to her father's house when her brother, 32-year-old Antonio Swanson, began spraying bullets at the young woman. Wilnita's boyfriend returned fire, but the shooter escaped on a bicycle. In the days leading up to her murder, Wilnita had gotten entangled in a dispute with Swanson, who accused her of taking a car he'd just bought. According to court documents, Antonio had threatened to kill Wilnita. But luckily, he was captured by U.S. Marshals 5 days after he gunned down his sister. During his arraignment on murder and weapons charges, Antonio called his indictment ridiculous and said he wanted to go straight to jail. He also tried pleading not guilty due to insanity, but the judge said it wasn't possible at that point in the court process. Swanson eventually pleaded guilty to reduced involuntary manslaughter and felony assault charges, and in the end he was sentenced to a minimum of 10 years in prison for the manslaughter charge and 7 years for the assault count. He's currently slated to be released in 2039. Number 5. The Fuss Family. From an early age, it was clear that Charles Fuss, the adopted son of Jackie and Bill Fuss, struggled with profound mental issues, and by the time he began showing symptoms, the Fuss family was in constant turmoil. The 4 children didn't get along in the slightest. As soon as they were old enough, all of the kids except for Charles got married and moved out of the family's home in Decatur, Georgia. Charles was in his 20s and had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Prone to sudden outbursts and other unpredictable behavior, he was unable to support himself financially, so his mother Jackie took care of him. Their relationship was toxic, and Bill Fuss had died of cancer in the early 1990s, leaving the two on their own to sort out their disagreements. In 1995, Jackie remarried and moved in with her new husband, leaving Charles alone in the family home. He was angry that he no longer had his mother to himself, even though Jackie still stopped by to check on him. During a visit one day in 1996, Charles swung an axe into Jackie's head during an argument over an $1,800 phone bill that Charles had racked up from calling adult talk hotlines. Police captured him 9 days later in Arkansas, where he was trying to hitchhike to California. Charles was found guilty of murder but was deemed mentally ill. He was sentenced to 10 years to life in prison, leaving the three remaining Fuss children, David, Margaret, and Melissa, to quarrel over their parents' estate, which had been left behind without a will. In June of 1999, 3 years after Jackie's murder, David Fuss's wife Kelly was brutally murdered in her own home, having been stabbed more than 30 times after being attacked while she was on the toilet doing a crossword puzzle. After clearing David of any wrongdoing, authorities arrested Margaret Fuss, Melissa Fuss, and Melissa's incestuous lover, Joel Dominguez, who also happened to be her biological brother, who grew up in another household. Prosecutors accused the trio of killing Kelly because she got in the way of their mother's estate dealings, and because they didn't expect her to be at home when they went there to take back some of Jackie's items that they felt David had stolen. All three suspects refused to talk, making it difficult to secure convictions against them. But the most damning evidence investigators could find pointed toward Joel Dominguez as the actual killer. He was found guilty of malice murder and was sentenced to 20 years to life. Margaret Fuss pleaded guilty to a lesser count of manslaughter and received a 10-year prison sentence, while Melissa Fuss turned state's witness against Joel in exchange for a reduced burglary conviction. As a result, she was also sentenced to 10 years. Number 4. The Yom Kippur Murders. Wealthy businessman Gerald Woodman and his wife Vera raised their 5 children in the upscale Los Angeles suburb of Brentwood. And in addition to being financially successful, the Woodmans had a rock-solid marriage and a happy home life, or so it seemed. As a natural Type A personality, Jerry was controlling toward his wife and kids behind closed doors, and he was harsher on some family members than others. He had a soft spot for his daughters and youngest son, while being especially demanding toward his 2 oldest sons, Neil and Stuart. Over the years, the 2 brothers developed a close bond over their shared frustrations over how their father treated them. And when they reached adulthood, Jerry tried to smooth out their fractured relationships by hiring Neil and Stuart to run one of his companies. When Jerry was hospitalized following a heart attack, the brothers discovered that their father was skimming higher amounts of money than he'd previously admitted to as part of an embezzlement scam all 3 were participating in together. Neil and Stuart filed a lawsuit and wrestled control of the business away from Jerry, and once again, they became estranged from their parents. One night in 1985, Jerry and Vera were shot dead at point-blank range in a parking garage by 2 men dressed as ninjas as they arrived home from a Yom Kippur dinner. Consumed by greed and anger, Neil and Stuart had hired brothers Steve and Robert Homick, along with Mike Dominguez and Sonny Majory, to kill their parents in a bid to collect on a $500,000 life insurance policy in Jackie's name. And as it turned out, their business was deeply in debt, and they needed the insurance money in order to set their finances straight. Everyone involved received life sentences except Steve Homick, who was sentenced to death. He died from natural causes in 2014 while on death row at San Quentin. Stuart Woodman died that same year from diabetes, almost 29 years to the day after the cold-blooded double murder. Number 3. The murder of Nancy Jane Harville. In early 2013, investigators unearthed the murdered body of a mother of 2 named Nancy Jane Harville. Originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan, Harville was killed in Arkansas back in 2011, nearly a year and a half earlier. Her murderers, identified as her stepmother Sherry Bowen and her stepbrothers John and Christopher Aldrich, had kept up the illusion that Nancy was alive by impersonating her online on social media. They also pretended to be her through emails and by renewing her health insurance using her identifying information. Police finally found Havel's remains after receiving a tip about her possible death and whereabouts. According to authorities, John Aldrich admitted to killing Havel in a physical altercation that broke out during a disagreement about the treatment of her 2 kids. Christopher Aldrich and Sherry Bowen were subsequently charged as John's alleged co-conspirators. The 3 suspects blamed Havel for her stepfather's death, which was attributed to natural causes. An arrest report stated that Sherry Bowen instructed John and Christopher Aldrich to hog-tie the victim. The trio then proceeded to beat and torture Havel with various objects, including their hands, baseball bats, broomsticks, cast iron pans, hot candle wax, and an airsoft gun. Then, after Havel died, the suspects wrapped her in plastic and buried her in the backyard. And they told anyone who might be looking for her that she left the state with someone they didn't know. Sherry Bowen pleaded guilty to murder and various other charges and received a 30-year sentence. John Aldrich was sentenced to 40 years for first-degree murder, kidnapping, and several other counts. Christopher Aldrich was convicted of kidnapping, battery, and abuse of a corpse, and received a 20-year sentence as a consequence. Number 2. Sonia and Damon Bamberg. Allison Nicole Nikki Bamberg and her husband Damon Bamberg had a contentious marriage that eventually ended in separation and plans for a divorce. One night in 2008, after moving into her apartment in Hazelhurst, Georgia, Nikki and Damon met up to do a custody exchange. Their divorce had just been finalized, but they were no closer to being peaceful toward one another than they had been at the beginning of the drama. Not surprisingly, the soon-to-be exes got into a disagreement during what was supposed to be a quick and painless exchange. While driving home from the convenience store where the planned meeting had taken place, Nikki was talking to her father on the phone. Suddenly, she said someone had shot out the rear window of her car. The shooting then continued, and Nikki stopped talking all of a sudden. On her father's end of the call, it sounded like she'd dropped the phone. Unwilling to let go of the argument, Damon Bamberg had allegedly chased Nikki down and shot her with his mother, Sonia, in the car. He then left his estranged wife's body on the roadside while he went to the local sheriff's department and filed a complaint against her regarding a fight that had occurred earlier that day. Nikki was later found with 2 gunshot wounds to the head and neck. Damon was the first person to be charged in connection with Nikki's death, but Sonia Bamberg wasn't dragged into the mess by simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. According to witnesses, she played an active role in the ongoing feud between Damon and Nikki. Those who knew the parties involved told police that Sonia threatened Nikki on several occasions. She also allegedly offered people money to kill her daughter-in-law. After being arrested on suspicion of Nikki's murder, Damon initially maintained his innocence, but he allegedly admitted his guilt to fellow inmates and confessed that his mom was directly involved in the plot. Further investigation revealed that a life insurance policy had been taken out in Nikki's name, with Sonia as the sole beneficiary. Furthermore, in the Bamberg's home, police found a calendar with the date of Nikki's murder marked with a sad face and the words, "Hell begins." Damon and Sonia Bamberg were both found guilty of Nikki's murder and were each sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. Number 1. Roby Severe. In August 2023, a 37-year-old Florida man named Roby Severe was arrested on suspicion of killing his sister over a power bill. According to police, Severe shot one of his sisters and hurt another during a disagreement at 10:30 a.m. at their home in Pine Hills. Severe allegedly dialed 911 and admitted to shooting the victim before deputies arrived at the scene. The surviving sister, who was taken to the hospital with severe head injuries, reportedly told police that Severe became angry at her and the victim over an electricity bill. She accused Severe of retrieving a gun from his bedroom, forcing his way into another room that the sisters were in, and physically attacking them by punching them and hitting them with the gun. Severe then allegedly shot Miguel Brown in the head as she tried to stand up, and afterward he left the room and called 911. Sadly, Brown died from her injuries, and the other sister will likely be permanently disfigured by her wounds. But drama is nothing new in the family, according to court documents. After the 3 siblings' mother died several years earlier, they wound up in court over a disagreement about whether to keep or sell the family home. The case was ongoing at the time of Severe's arrest on suspicion of murder. According to the most recent update on the murder case, Severe remains behind bars pending the outcome of his next court date.
10. William Hale and Frank Allison. Two Florida dads came out on the losing end of a road rage incident gone wrong in October 2022 when they were both hit with criminal charges, including attempted murder. According to news reports, 43-year-old Frank Allison and 35-year-old William Hale became entangled in a conflict that spanned several miles and 2 countries. For law enforcement, the ordeal began shortly after 6 o'clock p.m. when 911 dispatchers began receiving reports about people being shot at. One witness described seeing vehicles matching the descriptions of the suspects' Dodge Ram and Nissan Murano driving so dangerously in a cat-and-mouse game that he thought something bad was going to happen. And unfortunately, his prediction proved correct when the two men opened fire on one another from inside their vehicles. Even more disturbingly, both of their daughters were injured in the altercation, but thankfully nobody died. Both Hale and Allison were charged with attempted murder, but the case against Allison was dropped after prosecutors concluded that he'd acted in self-defense when he fired the first shot. According to the state, Hale tried running Allison off the road, and Allison's decision to resort to gunfire therefore constituted a justifiable use of force under Florida's Stand Your Ground law. Prosecutors chose to pursue the charge against Hale, who pleaded not guilty. The outcome of the case is unclear, and it's likely ongoing. 9. Michael Barbella and Michael John Duffy. On what began as a typical summer evening in mid-2015, sheriff's deputies in Wycomico County, Maryland, were called to the scene of an altercation between two softball dads from New Jersey that had escalated to physical blows. According to reports, law enforcement arrived to find 48-year-old Michael Barbella of Ventnor being treated by paramedics. Barbella and 45-year-old Michael John Duffy of Mays Landing had allegedly gotten into a fistfight which started when Barbella shoved Duffy, then threw the first punch and missed. Duffy shoved back, and Barbella took another swing, at which point the scuffle broke out full force. The altercation reportedly ended with Duffy on top of Barbella, repeatedly punching his adversary in the face. According to police, Barbella had driven from New Jersey to Maryland specifically to confront Duffy and other softball parents from a travel team. Court documents stated that his daughter had already been kicked off the team due to issues revolving around her father's behavior, and that she wasn't present at the time of the fight. The brawl occurred inside a convention center where over 1,000 spectators had gathered to watch a game. Both men were charged with second-degree assault, affray, and disorderly conduct. 2 months after the incident, they were each convicted of disorderly conduct and were sentenced to a year of probation. They were both fined $100. 8. Anthony Nardini. In early 2023, a 42-year-old California man named Anthony Nardini was accused of trying to kill his 24-year-old son in an unhinged sledgehammer attack near Simi Valley. According to the VC Star, the victim was asleep at a relative's home, where both he and Nardini were staying. The pair had recently reconnected, but their attempt to bond apparently turned into an argument, which then escalated into a physical brawl. Family members broke up the fistfight and Nardini left in his truck, only to return a short while later while his son was sleeping on the sofa. He allegedly told everyone else in the house to go to bed, then proceeded to bludgeon the victim with a 10-pound, 4.5-kilogram, 3-foot-long, 1-meter sledgehammer once the two were alone. When the relatives who were asked to leave heard the victim being struck, they rushed back inside. But by the time they responded to the situation, the damage had been done and Nardini had fled out the back door. Responding officers found the blood-covered sledgehammer outside the residence, and in the meantime, Nardini's son was hospitalized for 10 days. he spent part of his hospital stay in a medically induced coma with severe head and torso trauma. Nardini already had an extensive criminal history before the attack, and the authorities were happy to charge him with a laundry list of crimes in connection with his most recent incident. He was ultimately convicted of attempted murder, aggravated mayhem, and assault with a deadly weapon, and was sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of parole starting in September of 2029. 7. Jose Pilar. In April 2023, a 54-year-old father from Kansas City, Missouri, named Jose Pilar, was arrested for allegedly fatally shooting his adult son. According to Jackson County prosecutors, police responded to a reported shooting sometime between 6 and 8 p.m. on the day in question. They arrived to find evidence that a shooting had indeed taken place inside the residence, but by then, the victim, 21-year-old Raul Pilar Sanchez, had been driven to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead from his injuries. When the story initially broke, law enforcement said that they'd identified a person of interest, but no arrests were immediately made. Over a week later, though, authorities announced Pilar's arrest on suspicion of second-degree murder and armed criminal action. Witnesses reportedly told investigators that Pilar and Sanchez were arguing over a family friend coming to visit, according to local station Fox 4 KC. At least one person claimed to have seen part of the actual shooting, while others said that they heard Pilar loading the gun that was used in the crime. The person who reported witnessing the suspect take the first shot said that he ran and heard subsequent gunshots as he fled the scene on foot. He also said that he heard Pilar threatening to shoot himself, but he apparently never followed through with his word, and by the time police arrived at the scene, the suspect had fled. As of January 2024, Pilar remains behind bars while awaiting the resolution of his case. 6. Patrick Piddock. Baby mama drama is undoubtedly stressful, but an Ohio dad named Patrick Piddock ended his relationship with the mother of his youngest child in the worst possible way in October 2012, when he fatally shot his girlfriend Suzanne Mickey Brown in her new Lexington apartment. Piddock quickly fell to the top of the suspect list and was soon indicted on 2 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and 2 counts of felonious assault. In July of 2013, he took a deal and pleaded guilty to murder with a firearm in exchange for a sentence of 18 years to life in prison. The details about the murder that were released to the public were limited until 2023, when the case was featured on an episode of the ID channel series, Evil Lives Here, The Killer Speaks. The producers interviewed Piddock and his daughter from a previous relationship, Fawn, during the show, which is titled, I Always Knew I Could Kill. Portrayed in the episode as volatile and short-tempered, Piddock was allegedly warned by the people in his life that he needed to get his rage under control before something terrible happened. He even admitted that he spent his entire life plagued by an uncontrollable anger that completely takes over when it sets in. And once it sets in, it's too late to stop it. During his interview with Evil Lives Here, Piddock blamed his anger issues on his violent upbringing, which left him struggling with lifelong post-traumatic stress disorder. He admitted to committing disturbing acts of aggression against various people before he ended up killing, after discovering during his childhood that severely injuring people gave him a sense of power. In one instance, he used a sledgehammer to dislodge the eyeball of a man who tried robbing him, taking self-defense to an excessive and unnecessary level. Fawn claimed that her father was both abusive and prone to blackout tantrums, and it got so bad that when she was 12 or 13, her mother left Piddock for good. After divorcing Fawn's mother, Piddock began dating Susan Brown, who was 13 years younger than himself. And at 39 years old, Brown became pregnant. Sadly though, Piddock murdered her shortly after their child was born. During his interview with Evil Lives Here, he recalled being high on drugs when he visited Suzanne at her apartment that fateful day. He claimed that Suzanne said that she no longer wanted their child, and that he shot her in order to protect the baby. It's an arguably doubtful narrative, but that's his story and he's sticking to it. Paddock's truthfulness has also been called into question regarding his claims of remorse over his deadly actions. 5. Sherman Shirley Frick Sr. 68-year-old Sherman Shirley Frick Sr. and his son, 27-year-old Sherman Palmer Fricks Jr., had a troubled history of conflict that they were never able to solve, despite police being called to their Deer Park, Texas home on numerous occasions. Their contentious relationship reached its breaking point in June of 2019, when the pair visited an electronics store together after the younger Fricks' phone broke. During the drive, Sherman Jr. allegedly began kicking the back of the front passenger seat where Sherman Sr.'s girlfriend was sitting. And the next day, Sherman Sr. allegedly stabbed his son to death. Prosecutors accused the elder Fricks of planning to shoot Sherman Jr. in the back the day after the shopping trip tantrum. According to the state, Sherman Sr. was sick of his son's attitude amid their increasingly strained relationship, and at his wit's end, he waited with a gun in hand for Sherman Jr. to return home for lunch the next afternoon. Sherman Sr. told law enforcement that Sherman Jr. responded with a smart remark when asked what he'd ordered for lunch, at which point he unloaded the handgun into his son's body. Sherman Jr. survived the onslaught of bullets, prompting his father to spend the next 20 minutes giving him a father-son talk before stabbing him to death with a kitchen knife. Emergency responders did everything in their power to try to save Sherman Jr.'s life, but he died from his injuries after being rushed to the hospital. Sherman Sr. was arrested on suspicion of murder, which can carry a sentence of up to life in prison if convicted. But for now, the outcome of the case is unclear. 4. Daryl Gene Evans. A disagreement over money took a deadly turn one afternoon in August 2022, when 61-year-old Daryl Gene Evans allegedly shot and killed his 37-year-old son, Richard Evans, at their home in Lewisburg, Kentucky. Daryl allegedly told law enforcement that the deadly argument broke out in the family's yard when Richard arrived at the residence. The elder Evans was reportedly angry at his son for failing to repay a loan he owed to his father. Daryl claimed that Richard clenched his fists and acted in a threatening manner, then followed him inside the house. According to the version of events relayed to the Logan County Sheriff's Office, Richard warned his father not to retrieve his gun from the love seat, where he kept it stashed in case the need for protection arose. But Daryl apparently ignored the warning and grabbed the pistol anyway, then fired a single fatal shot into his son's face and head area. In the words of the arrest report, Daryl said that it was obvious his son was dead, so he exited the house and dialed 911. As a result, he was charged with first-degree murder and was detained at the Logan County Detention Center on a $1 million bond. As of November 2023, Daryl was petitioning the court to dismiss the charges against him on the basis of self-defense. The argument came after he underwent a psychiatric evaluation and was found competent to stand trial. And while the current status of the case is unclear, records show that Evans isn't currently in local or state custody. 3. David Contreras. In early November 2023, 911 dispatchers in southwest Miami-Dade, Florida, received an emergency call from 52-year-old David Contreras, who allegedly shot and killed his adult son. According to police, the suspect admitted to shooting the victim, Eric Contreras, who was in his late 20s at the time. Emergency responders reportedly arrived at the residence at around 2 p.m. to find the victim dead outside the front door. The area surrounding the house was blocked off well into the night as detectives worked to get to the bottom of what had happened. Neighborhood resident Jamie Stramondo told local station WSVN that it was scary for something like this to happen in the area, which is typically quiet and has a low violent crime rate. Another community member, Jacob Billings, described feeling speechless when he learned of the incident. The news outlet reported that it was unclear whether there's a history of law enforcement being called to the home. As of January 2021, the elder Contreras remains held without bond while awaiting the next steps in his case. 2. Darius Richardson. While responding to reports of a possible shooting during the pre-dawn hours one October morning in 2017, police in Montgomery, Alabama discovered 22-year-old Ladarius Snow suffering from stab wounds. He died from his injuries, and responding officers arrested his father, 47-year-old Darius Richardson, on suspicion of murder, with authorities revealing little more than the fact that a fight between two relatives escalated into violence inside the family home. Subsequent reports revealed that Darius stabbed his son in the chest with a kitchen knife at around 3:15 a.m. at their apartment. The victim was then rushed to a nearby hospital where he succumbed to his wounds. Nearly 2 years after the stabbing, in July of 2019, a grand jury dismissed the murder charge against Richardson and instead opted to indict him on a reduced manslaughter charge. The indictment stated that the suspect acted in a sudden heat of passion caused by provocation recognized by law, and before a reasonable time for the passion to cool and for reason to reassert itself. It's a fancy way of saying that Richardson lost all self-control in a sudden rage and therefore acted irrationally and without having planned the act ahead of time. Records now show that he was convicted of the manslaughter charge and is currently serving a 20-year sentence in state prison. 1. Eulelio Uriarte. On an otherwise typical Friday morning in May of 2023, 911 dispatchers in Apple Valley, California, received an emergency call about a father who allegedly stabbed his 25-year-old son along a local riverbank. Responding deputies found the victim suffering from a puncture wound and a head laceration. They were told that the suspect, 49-year-old Eulelio Uriarte, had also forced his wife into a vehicle at their residence before driving to the crime scene. The suspect was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder and kidnapping. Uriarte's bail was set at $90,000, and records show that he's not currently in custody. For now, the circumstances surrounding the case remain unclear, and it's understandably difficult to understand what could possibly push a father to the point of killing his own son, especially in such a seemingly cold and calculated way.
10. Boat scam. In a fraud case, Mumbai cyber cell arrested Ragini Khandelwal, 52, and Mansi, a mother-daughter duo from India, on March 12, 2021. They reportedly scammed an Andheri businessman and embezzled approximately $12.5 million. The offer they made was to build a tugboat and a barge vessel during the lockdown. The duo promised the businessman $20,000 every month after helping him out with clients by renting out the vessels. Sushant Shelankar, the 39-year-old businessman who works in the shipping logistics industry, filed a complaint in October 2020 when he discovered that the accused had scammed other high-profile individuals, including a politician from Mumbai and Thane, by showing them the identical hull. Upon learning about the arrest warrants, Mansi fled to the United Kingdom before flying to Dubai and landing in Mumbai on January 1, 2021. Padma, Sushant's wife, also his lawyer, said that the duo had scammed her husband. The pair have scammed several other people for over $18 million after they illegally sold the same hull to these people. Mansi tried to escape by leaving the country, but they arrested her for violating the local quarantine laws. In the complaint, Sushant said he was looking for a tugboat and barge after applying for his company on June 18, 2020. he inquired about it on an online trading website. 2 days later, he received a call from Amir Khan, who further connected him with Ragini, a vessel maker in Kalyan. 9. Illegal activity. The police arrested a mother and daughter duo named Ramona Ramuta, 42, and Daniela Sinanan, 24, from the USA on prostitution charges on August 6, 2013. According to a police report, the two women advertised on Backpage.com's adult escort section. The post reportedly stated that Jasmine and Angel were waiting in Boynton Beach to rock your world with 2-for-1 discounts. Officers said neighbors saw many suspected Johns enter and leave the mother and daughter residence throughout the inquiry. Officers stopped a suspected John when he left the apartment in July of the same year. The police said that the individual admitted to the officers that he paid $100 for sex with Ramona and Daniela. According to the police report, on July 24th, an undercover officer called the contact number advertised on Backpage.com and set up a meeting with Jasmine and Angel the next day. The undercover cop went to the mother-daughter flat on July 25th and they offered him the 2-for-1 deal for $150. The officer handed Ramona $100 and told him he needed to return to his car to recover the remaining $50. Officers then entered the residence and took them into custody. They gave the duo bail after a warning. After a few weeks, the police received many complaints about the duo going back to their old ways. They arrested them once again under the same charge. 8. Exotic parlor. Police arrested Anne-Marie Dodge, 55, and her daughter Jennifer Lynn Dodge, 30, in August 2017 for operating an unauthorized sexual massage parlor out of their suburban home's carport. These two women posted an ad on Backpage.com. According to investigators, one of Anne's advertisements stated, "I am a beautiful, skilled, and licensed massage therapist that God has chosen to use to convey his healing energy to you and elevate you to a new level of bliss. I specialize in deep tissue, therapeutic, and energy massage." The police separately detained Jennifer Dodge the next day after they said she provided an undercover sexual favor for $200 rather than the $120 cost of a normal massage. In a live press conference, Officer Jessica Sullivan of the Sarasota Police Department said, "There was a carport on the right side of the property, and it almost seemed like they enclosed part of the porch, and that's where the massage and prostitution were taking place." The neighbors reported seeing 5 to 10 cars every day, with most of them being older white guys. Anne faced 2 felony counts of practicing medicine without a license and 2 misdemeanor counts of running a massage business without permission. They charged Jennifer Dodge with prostitution, and this wasn't her first one. According to court records, she already had 3 past prostitution offenses. 7. Homecoming scandal. Police arrested Laura Carroll, a former Florida assistant principal, and Emily Grover, her daughter, in 2021 for casting fake votes to help Emily win the homecoming. The duo denied the allegation in Good Morning America. In October 2020, they crowned Emily the homecoming queen at J.M. Tate High School, but a few months later, they arrested both the mother and daughter, and they faced multiple felony charges because of acquiring fake votes. According to officials, Carroll entered the school district's internal system while working as an assistant principal at nearby Bellevue Elementary School to submit false votes for her daughter to win. As the news release stated, they detected hundreds of votes for the school's homecoming court as fake in October. The investigation found 117 votes from the same IP address in a short amount of time. Investigators discovered indications of illegal access to the system connected to Carroll's smartphone and computers at her house. They cast 246 votes from those devices for homecoming court. According to investigators, Carroll's account viewed 372 high school data since August 2019, with 339 of those being Tate students. These documents contain personal information, such as medical histories and test results. They gave Laura and Emily 16 years in prison. In an interview with ABC, Laura stated she was shocked at how scores of fake votes were linked to her phone and her family's residence. 6. Fake doctor. Libby Adam, 51, and Alicia Gallas, 23, were both arrested on August 5, 2021 for an illegal butt implant surgery, which resulted in the death of 22-year-old Carissa Rajpal, an aspiring social media star. The couple, according to investigators, had been conducting cosmetic surgeries for years and were recruiting patients via Instagram. These things are done by people who have no training, no standards, and no contingency plan in case something goes wrong, said LAPD detective Robert Dinlocker. According to police, on October 15, 2019, both ladies allegedly conducted an outlaw buttocks enlargement surgery on Carissa Rajpal. According to investigators, neither lady had a medical license, and they did the treatment in a non-medical institution. The LAPD officers said that the ladies' technique involved injecting an uncontained, liquid silicone material into the body, which may enter the bloodstream and cause an embolism. Silicone should not be injected into the buttocks or breast, said Dr. John Timothy Katzen, a cosmetic surgeon. The two women had performed the surgery on Carissa for the third time. According to the LAPD, Libby and Alicia phoned 911 to assist Carissa, but then fled the scene without identifying themselves or informing the paramedics what had happened so they could treat her properly. She died in the emergency room, and physicians did not know the duo had given her a silicone injection. According to investigators, the accused had been providing these treatments out of their homes since 2012 and charged approximately $14,000 for 3 sessions. Other clients have reportedly called the police to claim they're experiencing various issues because of the surgery. 5. Not Victoria's Secret. The police accuse Maria Corina Perez, 38, and her daughter Melissa Susana Partida, 19, from Los Angeles, California, of stealing thousands of dollars in products from Victoria's Secret stores during a 2-year period. According to police records, both the mother and daughter duo allegedly used a well-practiced strategy to steal almost $250,000 worth of products from a renowned lingerie retailer. The investigation began when police claimed that a string of 5 thefts occurred at the retailer's locations in Oxnard and Thousand Oaks over 4 months, resulting in a loss of roughly $15,000 in goods. Each time, the procedure was the same. 3 people, 2 ladies and a female teenager, would enter a store with a baby stroller and load it with stuff. Then one person would divert attention away from the salesperson as the other 2 pushed the stroller out of the store. After examining surveillance footage and other evidence with Victoria's Secret loss prevention, police could identify and locate the culprits. The 3 also traveled to the Bay Area, where they committed a series of thefts from Victoria's Secret stores using the same tactics, according to Thousand Oaks cops. According to the business, they suspect the team of stealing $250,000 from the merchant stores. They took all 3 into custody and charged them with commercial burglary. They also charged Melissa with 2 counts of assisting a juvenile in delinquency. 4. The wrong target. On February 6, 2017, Xiomara Quintanilla, 45, and Jennifer Quintanilla, 17, police arrested a mother-daughter duo in Houston after they charged them with assaulting a loss prevention officer and stealing from Target. According to a security video obtained by Harris County Precinct 4, the video showed them putting stuff in a shopping cart and exiting Target without paying for them. Before they exited the store, a loss prevention officer attempted to stop them. They detained the girl without incident. However, as the daughter was being arrested, the mother reportedly began throwing stuff from the basket at the loss prevention workers. According to authorities, the mother then allegedly approached one of the shop cops and smacked her in the face. The mother ran to her parked car, but deputies stopped her in the parking lot before she could escape. On January 1st, 2022, another incident of assault and theft happened in North Las Vegas, where the mother-daughter, Lenora Richard and Latoya Walker, barged into the victim's house and tried to change the locks. The duo pushed the victim and went into the house when asked to leave many times. The victim stated Lenora began pulling her hair, scratching her, and punching her in the face before the ladies escaped with a safe and further belongings. Lenora also entered a room and removed a dresser drawer containing 3 old wallets, but the wallets were empty, according to authorities. A third suspect assisted the 2 ladies in changing the locks, which Lenora later said was a locksmith. 3. Crazy and thoughtless duo. Deputies arrested Rachel Dungan, 38, and Lillian Shoemaker, 20, in 2019 in the USA for shooting Lillian's boyfriend multiple times. Deputies learned the victim was at home with Lillian when Rachel arrived. According to investigators, he stated that they all left the residence, with him following the two ladies in his vehicle. According to Sheriff Mike Azell, Rachel was driving the vehicle carrying Lillian, and Lillian began shooting at the man. After being shot, the victim returned home and dialed 911 for help. The deputies discovered him with several gunshot wounds when they arrived at the residence on Highway 63. They sent him to hospital for treatment of non-life-threatening wounds. U.S. Marshals apprehended the mother-daughter duo on August 18, 2019 in Mobile County, Alabama. Both of them faced charges of severe assault. On February 25, 2019, in the US, police arrested Shana Decree and her husband Dominique Decree for murdering 5 of their relatives, including 3 children. The duo killed Shana Decree's children, Nara Smith, 25, Damon Decree Jr., 13, Shana Decree's sister, Jamila Campbell, 42, and Campbell's 9-year-old twin daughters, Imani and Erica Allen. Around 4 p.m. on February 25th, Bucks County Children and Youth staff paid an unannounced visit to the Morrisville apartment, which led to the discovery of the crime scene. The caseworker instructed an apartment complex maintenance worker to look inside when no one answered the door. When the worker entered the flat, he found it in utter chaos. The duo denied it at first and said that 2 unknown men killed the victims, but later confessed with a new, twisted story. 2. Money heist. Police arrested Norma Edwina Cisneros and Tina Guerrero for robbing a bank in Westminster on October 11, 2011. After scaring tellers with a bomb, the mother and daughter duo reportedly robbed the bank. The mother informed 9 News that she had no clue that her daughter had walked into the bank. She told the news station, "All this time she was looting a bank, and I didn't know." According to Trevor Matarasso, a spokesperson for the Westminster Police Department, officers were called to the TCF Bank at 72nd Avenue and Federal Boulevard on a hold-up alert at 4:40 p.m. on October 11, 2011. According to witnesses, Tina, 31, saw them entering the bank with a duffel bag and claiming there was a bomb inside. They saw no additional weapon, according to witnesses. Tina reportedly stole an undisclosed sum of money before sprinting out of the bank to a parked beige SUV driven by her mother, Norma, 53. An undercover cop saw the SUV leaving the bank, who was in the vicinity for another investigation. According to Matarasso, the cop gave other officers a description of the SUV. They discovered the SUV and stopped it around 75th Avenue and Broadway. They apprehended Norma on the spot. However, Tina fled from the vehicle, but they discovered her later hiding in a neighboring apartment complex's laundry closet. They apprehended her without incident. On October 14, 2011, prosecutors charged Norma and Tina with robbery. 1. Credit card theft. Police arrested and apprehended Barbara Duncan, 53, and Amber Morgan, 28, a mother-daughter duo, in relation to mail thefts in 25 Indiana counties. They discovered the two in a motel in Seymour, Indiana, with many bundles of mail, including anything from identification cards to bank letters to credit cards and more. For months, police from Winnemac to Evansville had been receiving reports of mail theft. One resident could describe a vehicle that was subsequently discovered abandoned. They found a hotel bill inside that led them to the culprits. They'd stolen the car. Benjamin Turner, a theft victim, claimed he discovered his car's tag was missing when he woke up. "I assumed maybe I dropped it or it fell off the back of my car," Turner stated. But when I questioned my father later, he said it was definitely stolen and I needed to report it. On Friday, they discovered Turner's tag on a similar automobile trapped in the snow among multiple mailboxes on County Road 340. Officers claim the couple had a laptop and were attempting to access bank accounts using information from the letter. They already had several credit cards in their possession that they were utilizing to make transactions. According to one victim, one of the ladies ripped up mail and then threw an empty envelope and other objects from her car as she drove away. Sheriff Michael Carruthers of Jackson County even discovered his brother's stolen letter among the evidence gathered.
Do you think there's ever a situation where it makes sense for a father to seriously injure or kill his adult son? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.